we are a long, long way behind. And just to put that in perspective, if you look at new vehicle sales in Norway, which my chapter in the book focuses on, they're at around 75% of new vehicle sales in Norway now are electric vehicles. So you compare that to Australia, and we're at less than 1% of new vehicle sales. When you look back to where these policies sort of started from, there was this big activism movement that started basically from an 80s pop star. So the lead singer of AHA, Morten Harket, he wanted to import an electric vehicle into Norway back in 89, I think.
Very early adopter.
Yes. And they didn't have any then. And so it was really hard for him to bring this vehicle and get it registered in Norway. But he basically said, well, it is an environmentally friendly vehicle and you should be encouraging these. So he launched this sort of civil disobedience campaign where he drove around in his little modified Fiat, and he refused to pay fines. He refused to pay for the ferries like you're supposed to. And he said, no, I shouldn't have to pay for these things because you should be encouraging these vehicles. And after a year of doing that, actually the car was impounded because he just didn't pay these fines. But there was so much media that people would turn up, buy the car back, and he would keep going. In the end, the government did listen to him, and they waived that registration fee and they waived those toll road fees as well. And then further on in the future, introduced a whole range of policies. So I thought that was quite an exciting little backstory.
For a long time, the Nordic countries have really seen a role for the state to step in and directly subsidise journalism because they see it as a public good, which it is. It's like the Defence Force or public education or sanitation or national parks, scientific research. It's a public good. So just because I watch Laura Tingle, on ABC 7:30 doesn't mean no one else can. We can all enjoy that.
Are there safeguards to ensure that financial support from the government doesn't mean pandering to the government or
Yeah, no, there are. And but I think overall press freedom in the Nordic countries dominates. They're the top, I think, 4 positions in the World Press Freedom Index. And so they really don't see it as the government trying to impose their will on editorial policies or anything like that. People just tend to see that they're, trying to help. But it is of concern, but not in the same way that I think in Australia, something like that might be seen as the government just trying to throw its weight around. And increasingly, whether it's specifically in terms of encouraging a diversity of voices, they do specifically, for example, subsidise Sami newspapers. That's the First Nations people in the Nordic countries, specifically for those outcomes. So sometimes there are editorial objectives, but it's certainly not the Nordic countries or governments dictating what's in editorial policies. But I think they're probably more reassured on that front because press freedoms and press independence is enshrined in the constitution in a lot of those countries.
The gender equality emphasis in policymaking means that decisions cannot be taken for major financial implications without considering whether they benefit women and men equally or differently. And if they do, that steps are taken to ensure that they do not increase gender inequality. It's at the heart of the way the Nordic countries do things. Sweden in particular leads in this respect, and that's associated with the strong policies for extensive paid parental leave. It's also interesting that Iceland and Finland both have female prime ministers at the moment. In fact, Finland has a 5-party coalition government in which every leader is a woman, and they've extended paid paternity leave in particular. So this is changing the role of fathers and of men in parenting and in household labour and so on. And there's a lot of evidence that these policy changes make a huge difference in people's lives. Not many people would know that Nokia was a forestry company, and then it decided...
I didn't know that. There you go.
Yeah, Nokia thought, well, actually, forestry is not looking terribly bright for its future. Why don't we get into the mobile phone market? And so they did.
As you do.
If only Tasmania had that same thought.
Yeah.